At the AIGA Design Conference, you gave a speech entitled What I've Learned, and you talk about the trajectory of your career and what you've learned along the way. During the talk, you stated to hijack your mentors, and that was also another inspiration for this podcast, I should add. From that, that's how new this podcast is, that it's kind of from there. But you said you don't have to ask them permission, you hijack them. They don't need to know that they are your mentors, and you do not need to tell them that you are their protege. Can you explain how you came to this conclusion? Did you always have this, or was it something you discovered as your career went on?
I don't think I ever thought of it consciously, but I kind of decided really early on, when I was in college, that what I just found the most inspiring was being exposed to people whose work I admired and kind of coming to understand how it was they did that work, what their inspirations were, what their methodology was to develop the work, how they could persuade clients to, how they could find people to commission the work, how they could explain those clients to actually follow through with the work, how they made sure that it was good, how they just sort of like fought for excellence. And so that could be, I had professors at the University of Cincinnati like Gordon Salko and Joe Bottoni and Stan Broad and Ann Gorey Goodman and Heinz Schenker, who I really admired. I had internships that I did with Dan Bittman in Cincinnati and AIGA medalist Chris Pullman, then up at WGBH up in Boston. Then, of course, I took a job right out of school with Massimo Vignelli, with whom I worked for 10 years from the week after I graduated until just a little bit more than 10 years later. And I never said to any of those guys, would you be my mentor? I just sort of attached myself to them and sucked every ounce of information and inspiration and everything else I could out of them.
Right?
Like a mosquito, like a parasite or a leech.
There you go.
Exactly. And at the same time, I also learned that all around me were you could learn from everyone. You could learn from anyone or anything. You could learn from a book. You could learn from a TV show. You could learn from a piece of music or a piece in a art gallery. You could learn from people your own age. You could learn from people that were younger than you. You could learn from people that were designers. You could learn from people that did something totally different. And so, to a certain degree, I think that the conventional idea of mentor, then I came to understand, these guys were really my mentors, and they acted as my mentors. They would advocate for me. They would, give me opportunities that made me grow as a designer, and I'd say as a person, as a human being too. But I think that wasn't the starting point of the relationship. The relationship just was me really kind of being interested in and being inspired by them, and just being an inquisitive person who was both willing to learn. And then I think in the long run, kind of you in turn have to be willing to teach and be a mentor yourself in a way, right? So I think I never thought about this that much until I would start getting inquiries, questions later on in life from people saying, how can I find a mentor? Would you be my mentor? And I never.
It's a lot to ask of someone.
Yeah, but people see the power of that sort of relationship, and I think they just decide, I'm going to be bold and go for it. Right. And I sort of I thought, well, that's a good way to do it, I suppose. But when I really thought about how I came to have these relationships myself, it had much less to do with kind of casting people in my mind as potential mentors, and more just to do with acting on my enthusiasm and passion I had for the professional field, specifically for different individuals and their work specifically, and just for the idea of design as a social activity that you do with other people. So I sort of started saying, look, you're making your first mistake by asking for permission. I just, you don't even, just do it, and you don't, you know, if you just sort of like see every relationship you have not as an opportunity for benefit or exploitation, but for teaching and learning, it ends up really being something that benefits everyone. So I swear to God, I learned just as much from the designers that work for me at Pentagram, obviously the partners I have here, a few of which are older than me, a lot of whom are younger than me, and just all over town, people that both do what I do something completely different, all over the world really, are people from whom I learn something or other. And, and sometimes I've been inspired by their writing, I've been inspired by their work, I've been inspired by their example, and I've never even met them. Every once in a while I'll sort of, a few months ago I met someone who wrote a book that really had inspired me, and I'd never met the person before, and it was just I felt like I knew them when I met them, and I think it's sort of alarming actually when that happens, because they're like,
it's happening right now to me.
No, but for them it was alarming. It was like, who are you again? I mean, it's sort of like, oh, I'm your biggest fan. So, so I think it's, but I mean, that's sort of, the world just presents all those opportunities, and I think it's a big mistake if you think that that relationship has to start with an application form and a sort of a formal agreement between you as a protege and your target as a mentor. I just think, just be hungry and be curious and be enthusiastic and passionate, and it all just sort of comes together.